Hi friend, and welcome back to Marvelous Friends, your home for all things Marvel Cinematic Universe and beyond. I'm Rhett, and today I'm discussing Captain America, the first Avenger. Now let's like the video, subscribe to the channel, and roll that credit. Last month, of course, was the month of July, and over the 4th of July weekend, I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate than watch the Captain America trilogy. And that got me to thinking that I have never done a review of any of those films here on the channel. And that's because the channel, of course, launched after they came out. So I thought today I'd go back and do a review of the first Avenger Captain America film. Now, how my reviews work is I do a quick 5 and 5 review, which means I talk about my 5 favorites and my 5 least favorite aspects of a given film. And now I am going back to watch a film that I've seen multiple times and discuss it again, and it's hard to do that in kind of a way that kind of reacts the same way as I do to a first time viewing of a film, because as you watch things you kind of ignore things that you necessarily didn't like, or you pick up on different things, so your opinions change on them. But I'm going to try my best to do an objective without taking into any account anything that changes or happens after the first Captain America film, and really just focus on how I felt the best of my memory when I watched it for the first time. All that being said, though, let's get the negatives out of the way with my 5 least favorite aspects of the film. Number 5, the blonde bombshell. Following the rescue of the 107, Steve Rogers finds himself in a position of celebrity, something he's never had, and with that comes the attention of females, something he also has never really had in his history. And this, of course, was all done to really demonstrate the story arc of the relationship between him and Peggy. But ultimately, I think this moment adds nothing. And what I'm talking about is when Private Lorraine corners him and seduces him into that kiss behind the shelves, which he's then later caught by Peggy doing. This leads to, of course, her being irritated at him and shooting at his shield with a pistol. However, after this initial moment of being upset, it really doesn't seem like there's any other further consequence of this little misdoing of Steve, and their relationship continues to progress unhindered. So it really didn't do anything that kind of it was meant to do, because I feel like the purpose of it was to show a hiccup and a struggle in the romance between the couple. And it really doesn't do that more than that initial moment and the following scene, because it's never really mentioned or hinted at again. But what it does do is take away from Steve Rogers himself and shows that he maybe isn't as good of a person as he is led to believe, or we're led to believe, because the whole point of him being selected over the other candidates is his moral fiber and the fact that he has this instinct desire to do what is right and is a good person. So really all this moment does is kind of take away from his character and that ideal of him being an upstanding good person. And so I would say this doesn't at all add to the story of his relationship to Peggy, and instead takes away from him as a character. And so I just really don't enjoy that it was included at all. Though I do enjoy that Natalie Dormer was in the film, because I enjoy her as an actress and she's in a lot of things I really enjoy, but just not this role. Number 4, Cap's first shield. Now I have to give a little background here on myself to understand why I find this to be a problem. In college for a while I was a theater production major, and during that time I did a couple of shows where I was the props manager, which means I designed and organized all the props for the show. And knowing that and having that information and experience, I know that this shield would not have held up in the manner that it was used, because Captain America takes that shield that is a prop into actual combat, and it comes back into camp relatively in pristine condition, with the exception of a giant fist punched into it. And that's just not realistic. Knowing how props work, they're created cheap and lightweight so that there's not a lot of dealing with them, and if they have to be replaced, it's not an expensive thing. Which means that shield most likely was made out of tin or aluminum, which, yes, those metals can be made to be rather sturdy, but most likely, again, considering this was cheap, and on top of that, was made to travel, considering this was a traveling show, was most likely made to be extremely lightweight as well, so it was easy to be transported and could be easily tossed around without any real concern. So the fact that he uses this in battle and it survives in such good condition just is not something I could buy into. And that, yes, of course, because I have experience in theater prop making, but even so, it's just not realistic, in my opinion, that he could grab a prop like that and use it in battle. And also, I'm a little suspect on helmets. However, I would imagine they probably had access just to regular helmets, and prop versus regular helmets aren't that much different. So I will buy into the helmet being more realistic than the shield for sure, because the shield is something made specifically for the show. Number 3, not enough Nazis. Now, this is me being a little bit critical, but Captain America's history comes from World War II, where he was introduced as an American hero fighting on the front lines against the Nazis. And we do know that, of course, the Nazi Party exists somewhere in this film, but for me, it just wasn't quite enough to really pay homage to that history of the character. We really do all see, as far as the Nazi Party goes, is when the 3 generals come up to question Schmidt, and they're quickly disposed of. Even when we first see Schmidt and his goons kind of take the church to collect the Tesseract, he is outfitted mainly in Hydra gear, and so are his soldiers, and his base of operations when we first see him have already transferred over to Hydra banners and Hydra uniforms. I just would like to see a little bit more of that presence and getting that history of how Hydra was hiding within the Nazi Party a little bit more, and actually to see maybe Captain America take on a few Nazi soldiers as well, because we really only ever see him fighting Hydra goons. Though I do enjoy the film and I understand the time constraint and they can't go into a ton of that detail, but just maybe one little snippet of actually seeing the Hydra soldiers in Nazi uniforms along with Schmidt, and maybe seeing a few Nazi soldiers being taken out by Captain America in some of those kind of quick montage battle scenes would have been nice, but again, I understand why. It was just something I would have liked to have seen. Number 2, the Howling Commandos. Speaking of something I would have liked to see a little bit more of and pay more homage to in the history of Captain America, we have the Howling Commandos. I just think, with the exception of Bucky, they weren't given very good attention. None of them really were established as to who they are and why they're important and what their speciality was that made them an essential part of Captain America's elite team. In fact, a lot of them aren't even really named at all by name in the film, except for just passing references. I would like to see them introduced a little bit more, maybe learn a little bit more about them in the film to really understand why they were such good soldiers and why they were ultimately chosen by Captain America for his team. Because really, again, the only one we get that information on is Bucky, because he's Steve's best friend. Now, eventually we do get a little bit more information on them because they make appearances in flashback episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and are featured in a few episodes of the Peggy Carter series, which does flesh out their stories a little bit more. But considering they have a long-lasting legacy in the MCU, considering we have 2 characters in the MCU that are grandsons of the Howling Commandos, that being Trip Jones in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Principal Murata in the Peter Parker School of Spider-Man, I just really think that they deserve a little bit more. Hint, hint, Marvel Studios, give us a Howling Commandos Disney Plus series. I think that story would be perfect for Disney Plus, and we would get to see a lot more of how they work. And we do know that the Howling Commandos had plenty of missions separate of Captain America, so him not being there would not necessarily be a big issue. Number 1, the Red Skull. Here again, I just feel like we didn't really see something to its full potential. The Red Skull, of course, is the original big bad of Captain America, besides Hitler himself, and so it was appropriate for him to be the main villain of this film. However, I just feel like we really didn't get to see him play out to the full potential that he has as a super soldier himself, as we do know in the film, and it's well established, that he was the first recipient of the experimental super soldier serum that is in Steve Rogers. And we just really didn't get to see him really demonstrate his strength to the full level that he could. Yes, we see him easily shove the top of the tomb off when the other 2 weakling soldiers weren't able to, but that was just a stone slab, and I feel like really with anyone who has a decent amount of strength probably could move that on their own. And later we see him punch in his fist through the very cheap prop shield on the Battle of the Bridge at the first moment when Steve Rogers meets the Red Skull. Now, all of that just really didn't impress me. And then it was kind of a lackluster moment of reveal when Schmidt takes off his mask, because it seemed like even in the moment, the mask that the actor was wearing didn't really reveal that easily, as it kind of was hard to pull off. And then you actually see him pull off a little chunk off the back of his head that stuck to him when trying to remove the prosthetic. On top of that, the final battle sequence, again, was lackluster, because obviously Captain America doesn't even finish off Schmidt himself. The Red Skull is ultimately done in by the Tesseract, who teleports him away. And in that fight, yes, the Red Skull did hold his own and was able to take a beating from Captain America, but the only time he ever had the upper hand is when he had a weapon or a gadget, never his actual strength. And in the entire sequence of the battles between Hydra and Captain America and his Howling Commandos, we just see teched out goons, and Schmidt and the Red Skull are just kind of the mastermind planner. They never are involved in any of that action, and I just would have liked to see him really used more in that aspect, because he really is a super soldier, and we just didn't get to see him display that skill set. Alright, that is enough of the negatives. Let's jump into my positives with number 5, Howard Stark. Here in the film, we receive a second version of the character of Howard Stark. This one is much younger than the one we are given in Iron Man 2. This one is years away from getting married and even farther away of having the idea of having a son. Now, this is really fun because it obviously develops the character a lot more, and we get to see kind of the progression of a young Howard to the Howard Stark that was Tony's father. And we get to see a little bit of like father, like son moment here, where Howard Stark is just like Tony was at the beginning of the first Iron Man film, a playboy enjoying the life that is given to him based upon his genius and the wealth that came along with the technologies that he develops. It's really kind of interesting to see how much they were alike, especially in their younger lives. And what's nice is we actually get a lot more of this Howard Stark as well, as it is this version of the character that is used in the Peggy Carter series. And I really enjoy getting to see this a lot more, and it was honestly probably my preferred actor out of the two that played the character as well. I think he did a really great job of embodying this playboy, carefree tech genius of that era. Now, the only issue I see here is that it can create some continuity issues for people, considering it's two different actors playing the same character. Is it a recasting, or what's going on here? But you just have to remember that we see them at very different points in their lives, and so they had to go with someone who was a younger actor to play Howard Stark at this point in his life versus the father figure that he is later on. Also, there is some confusion here, considering we see the Stark Expo in the Captain America film, and also he's talking about the Stark Expo in Iron Man 2 in those old film reels. Now, what's clear to here that you must keep in mind that this is probably the first Stark Expo in the Captain America film. In Iron Man 2, he's talking about a later version, and that we kind of must have seen multiple of them over the years, similar to how there's world fairs every so many years. It's the same kind of idea there. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this version of the character more so than the previous version we got, and it's why it's on this list. Number 4, Tiny Steve. I was really impressed by this, and the idea behind it I really appreciated, though yes, it wasn't perfect CGI work, and there was times that you could really tell that it was computer-generated effects. The fact is that they took a different person's body that was scrawnier and smaller and put Chris Evans' head on it with pretty good effect. And it was a great idea to really create a separation between the pre- and post-Super Soldier Serum versions of Steve Rogers. And I like that they did it in this way, because oftentimes production companies have actors do major swings in body size, weight, and muscle mass to fill these roles. And they could have easily made Chris Evans drop weight to be a more scrawny version of himself, and then gain a bunch of muscle to become the more bulked out super soldier. And that's just not good on the body. It's very dangerous, and actors and actresses have spoken out before about having to do these extreme body transformations for films and how it really hurts them physically to do that, and it can have long-term health effects to really swing your body's weight up and down like that. So I like that they did this in a way that's a lot healthier for the actor. It was done in a convincing enough way that I was able to enjoy it and not distracted by the computer effects, though it wasn't a perfect transition. I understand that it is only so much you can do with CGI. Number 3, Peggy Carter. Another character I really enjoyed in this film being added to the MCU was Peggy Carter, which is such an amazing female for the MCU, and really the second kick-ass character we have as far as females go in the MCU. The first obviously being Black Widow, we were introduced to in Iron Man 2. Now, Peggy Carter, of course, was such a good character that she received her own spin-off franchise, a franchise I still say ended way too soon. I am just really impressed by her in this film and her character and how much of a strong female character she is. I mean, she stands up for herself. She is ahead of her times by taking such a high position in the military itself, even though people talk down to her, including her subordinates in the military ranking system, talk down to her, and she stands her own. She has a mean right hook. She's a sharpshooter. I mean, she took out a guy who was driving a vehicle from blocks away with a pistol. I mean, she's impressive, and if nothing else, I mean, she was on the frontline siege of the final battle against the last big Hydra base, and she holds her own in that fight, taking out several enemies and actually saving Steve at one point as well. I'm just really impressed with the character. I thought she was great. I loved the casting. I'm glad that it led to her own series, because honestly, the character was good enough that it deserved one. And I definitely plan to do a discussion on Peggy Carter series at some point on this channel. It's just something I have to get to. There's so many shows and so many episodes, it takes a long time to catch up on all that, but I am trying, so I'll be watching for that in sometime in the future. Number 2, sticking to theme motifs. Now, whoever did the writing for this film did a great job, because they scripted in some great themes and really used them over and over again in different ways to really establish the transformation and the continuation of story. And I'm going to talk about 2 examples of that. First and foremost is the iconic symbol of Captain America himself, the shield. And we see it pop up in different ways at different times that simulates his transformation as it moves forward. Now, first we see him in the back alley defending himself against the bully, we could say, from the movie theater. In this fight, he of course is not necessarily holding his own, though he is standing up for himself nonetheless, and to defend himself he reaches for a trash can lid and holds it up in the traditional way that he would hold a shield. And at this moment we see him using kind of a makeshift shield at a point where he's not really able to stand on his own. The next time we see him hold his shield, it is a taxi cab door. Now this of course is a little bit more strong, as we do see him now strong himself, and he's able to actually defend himself in a much better way using this shield. However, he is not the refined persona of Captain America yet, so it's still just a makeshift device. From here we see him use that prop shield in the theater production. It looks nice, it has a purpose, but ultimately it's just a fake shield. It's not really a sturdy, strong shield. Just like Captain America himself is the super soldier, and he is a symbol, but he's not being used in the way he should. From here, of course, he gets his true shield, his iconic shield, and a true weapon when he finally himself is being used as the super soldier he is. His legacy continues on after he, of course, is presumed dead and gone missing, as we see kids in the streets of New York playing as the Howling Commandos and Captain America, and a small kid is playing with a trash can lid painted as his shield, kind of beckoning back to the first use of the shield idea and demonstrating how his legacy continues on. And don't forget that it is his shield that signals to the researchers or agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not really clear who they are when they find Captain America that he is there. It's his shield they find first, not his body. The second idea I would like to point out here that is used over and over again is the idea of dancing, and how it is used to kind of develop the relationship and romance of Peggy and Steve. Here we see the first instance of the idea of going dancing is when Bucky brings a couple of girls for a double date to go dancing after the Stark Expo. Of course, Steve Rogers is not interested in that, and he sees that there are more important things to be done and ditches out to try to be drafted again. The next time we see this, we see him mentioning how he just hasn't found the right partner because it's not important in him right now. It's not important to him right now to go dancing. This conversation happens between him and Peggy in the back of the taxi cab on the way to the super soldier procedure. This is then echoed later on by Peggy, who clearly understands that Steve is waiting for the right time to pursue a romance, when she says back to him at the bar in, I presume, Germany, that she herself is also waiting for the right partner. Obviously, timing is not in the favor of the two, but they kind of concrete the idea of their commitment to one another by making that final date plan to go dancing with one another, having finally found the right partner at the right time. Unfortunately, it just never is able to come back. Now, there are other ideas and different themes and stuff like that that are used over and over again, but this is just a couple of examples that really stood out to me, and I really enjoyed it. Again, props to the writers on this. Number one, the Avengers are coming. This was such a big moment at the post-credit scene when we saw Nick Fury approach Captain America in the modern time regarding the Avengers Initiative, and then the title came that said the Avengers are coming. The first official announcement of the Avengers team-up film. Now, of course, we had teasers to the idea of the Avengers in the works in the previous films, and I mean, the film itself was called The First Avenger, which was a hint in within itself. But the actual confirmation made the movie theater go nuts. Everyone was so excited. I was excited. It was such an epic moment, and really and truly one of the first big moments in the post-credit scenes, in my opinion. Now, there was a lot of really exciting things. Of course, we had the hint at Thor at the end of Iron Man. We've had, of course, discussion of potential team-ups in the Iron Man films, an interaction between Iron Man, Tony Stark, and Nick Fury. But to officially get that announcement that the Avengers are coming was such a pinnacle moment that, yes, was part of this film, so I guess it counts. I'm counting it anyways, but I would love to know what your favorite and least favorite aspects of the first Captain America film were. Let me know down in those comments. I'd also love to know your thoughts on the Captain America trilogy as a whole. Now, eventually, I do plan to do the other two movies as well. I just have to get around to them, so be watching for those, and I also plan to catch up on all the other films I haven't done reviews yet, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you aren't already so you get those videos. If you enjoyed my review today, make sure to give this video a like. I appreciate it, and it helps the channel. Until next time, though, I hope you are having a marvelous day. Bye, friend.